Do you know Illustrator? If so, you may know that it provides two styles of canvas, regular and extra humongous. And by extra humongous, I don't mean big enough to accommodate poster art. I mean big enough to cover the side of a typical city bus 72 times over, which is a fairly recent development. Back in the summer of the year 2020, Illustrator 24.2 introduced what Adobe called the 100 times canvas, which means that when creating a new document, not when resizing an existing artboard, by the way, you can create one or more artboards, up to 1,000 in all, that when added together consume up to 100 times as much area, that is 10 times as wide and 10 times as tall as the previous limitation. And so I'll go ahead and zoom way out here so that you can see the dark gray canvas, which contains all artboards. We just got the one shown in black, as well as their bleeds represented by that red rectangle. The lighter gray area outside the canvas is the pasteboard, which may contain objects but not artboards. And incidentally, by objects, I mean type. Notice this type is completely outside the canvas, as well as partial path outlines. So check this out. I can draw a rectangle outside the canvas, but I can't move it outside. If I want to move it, I have to make sure it's at least partially inside the canvas, which is arbitrary and somewhat defeats the purpose of the pasteboard, but it is what it is. Oh, and quick plug. If you like that sort of thing, check out patreon.com/Deke now, where I have more. Did I say something about covering the sides of 72 city buses? Yeah, I did. Kind of makes you want to learn more, doesn't it? Yeah, it does. In which case, away we go. All right, now that we have the introduction out of the way, let's take a look at what I'm calling the classic canvas. Notice I'm not calling it the legacy canvas, and that's because it remains in force by default. If you want a larger canvas, you have to ask for it. And so I know this stuff gets a little bit dense, confusing, and so forth, so we're just going to review, just for a moment. This dark gray square, it's a square, is the canvas. And so it fits on screen, and that's because we're zoomed out so far. If I were to press Control 1 or Command 1 on a Mac to zoom in, we would see the artboard at 100%, right? However, what I've done is I've just gone ahead and highlighted this 100% value in the bottom left corner, and I changed it to 4.5. And that happens to work well on this screen to see the entire canvas. So 4.5%, we're really zoomed out. And so the dark gray canvas, I just want to emphasize this. The pasteboard's outside the canvas. It's kind of a no man's land. Objects can kind of hover there and so forth. But artboards, your artboards and your bleeds for borderless printing must fit inside the canvas. That's an absolute must. It has to happen. Now, this is the default canvas, incidentally, just so you know. And so to just get a sense of what's going on there, prior to 2020 and by default to this very day, that's where things are a little bit also confusing, I think. But anyway, the canvas measured before 2020 and measures today going forward by default 16,383 points in both directions. A point is a 72nd of an inch. These days it's exactly that. So it is an imperial unit, by the way. And so if you want a different unit, because who doesn't, then we've got these. That's about 18 feet, 11 and a half inches, so almost 19 feet, which is huge, right? That's a big canvas, and that is the default. Doesn't get any smaller. Or 5 3/4 meters, just in case. And by the way, these are approximations, and I'm rounded down slightly in both cases, so you're not disappointed. But if I'm reading your expression correctly, it's not disappointment, it's disbelief. 16,383. What kind of crazy number is that? Obviously, that's wrong. Well, it's right. Just I assure you. But it's not. No, it's a weird number, but it's not prime. I just want you to rest assured we're not talking about a prime number. 3, as any child knows, a kindergartner, 3 times 5,461 equals exactly 16,383. And so does, by the way, there's other factors out there. So does 43 by 381, that's 16,383, and 127 by 129. There's a little bit of a clue for you if you care to think about it. Don't though, because it doesn't really have anything to do with this. Here's what's really going on. It's PostScript. PostScript, you know, is the industry standard printing language, right? Used by every press out there, as well as, well, it was invented in 1984, and then it was implemented by the Apple laser printer in 1985. Cost $8,000 for that thing. Slow, unbelievably slow by modern standards. But anyway, it uses 14-bit coordinates. And you know that PostScript is kind of the basis for a lot of stuff in Illustrator and InDesign for that matter. But let's focus on what that means. 14-bit. Bit, you know what a bit is, right? A bit is an on-off switch. So the 0 is off, or it's not a 0, it's like a circle. And the vertical bar is on. So it's one of two things. It's 0 for off or 1 for on. That's all you got. And so 2 is what the bit is. 14 means 2 to the 14th power. I know, it's math. It's easy math. And by the way, you don't have to do it. I'm just showing it to you. And so it's just a slideshow. Don't think math. And so here's the deal. 2 to the 14th power is 16,384. Now, even if you don't like math, you can tell the difference between 16,384 and 16,383. Those are two different numbers. They're close, but they're not the same. Well, what's happening, do you suppose? Well, bear in mind that we'll just start with 2 to the first power. We all know that's 2, right? Anything to the first power is itself. But in this case, you got to factor in 0. One of the digits is always 0. When you're counting to 2 in bits in binary, then it's 0 and 1. You never get to the number 2. These are the two numbers, 0 and 1. Similarly, if it's 2 to the second power, which is 4, 2 times 2 is 4. I bet you've heard that. And then even if you have discomfort where math is concerned, but the numbers, that's the weird part, are 0. Always start with 0, 1, 2, and 3. So you don't ever get to the number 4. The same thing happens no matter what power you apply. So 2 to the 14th power is 16,384. Admittedly, however, you start counting at 0, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to 16,383. You never quite get to 16,384. All right, so what does this even look like? You go to the file menu. Let's say you want to create a default canvas. You go to the file menu, choose the new command. And then I'm just going to switch to art and illustration here, and I'll go with a poster. Let's make a poster, which is, by the way, what is this poster size? If we look at it in inches, it's 18 inches wide and 24 inches tall. So it's pretty big. I'd call that posterific, I guess. Millimeters. Yeah, let's look at millimeters. So 457, those of you who know what the heck those are. Anyway, I'm going to go back to points because I'm very comfortable with them. And more to the point, let's create a huge bleed because we want borderless printing, right? So we want our colors to go off the page, off the cut page, the trim size. And so I'll just change this to something ridiculous, like 100 points, just so we can see it in a bird's eye view. And I'll take the number of artboards up to 12. So we have just a ton of artboards. And I'm going to click on more settings right there because I want to change the spacing. The spacing has to fit inside the canvas as well. And I'm going to space these guys 100 points apart. 4 columns is great because that means 3 rows because 12 artboards. And then I'll create the document. And here it is. And now I'll just zoom out a little bit so we can take in the entire canvas. That is the default canvas. And all 12 of our poster size artboards fit very nicely inside of it. Now let's take a look at the alternative, which is the large size canvas. At least that's what Illustrator seems to be calling it. And so the idea is that nowadays, if you prefer, the canvas can be 10 times as wide and as tall as the PostScript standard that we saw just a moment ago, which means 163,830 points in both directions, or 10 times 10, so 100 times the total area. And by way of example, this artboard that you're looking at right now measures 134,200 points by 85,600 points, which is more than 150 by 99 feet, or just shy of 15,000 feet square, or 1/3 of an acre. That's crazy, but it's true. And if you prefer the metric system, that's 45.861 by 30.339 meters, or 1,391 square meters. Isn't that just crazy? Now, you may look at this and say, Deke, you're very wrong about that. It's the same size as this document right here. I mean, look at that text. It's identical. Well, here's the difference. Here's the reason. that your eyes are fooling you. Notice up here in the title tab that I'm viewing this document at the 100% zoom ratio. So 1-for-1, that is print size these days. Whereas this guy up here in the title tab, notice that we're looking at it at the 1% zoom ratio. So we're zoomed way, way out. And you know what I'm going to do is zoom out even further by pressing Control minus. That's Command minus on the Mac, so that we can take in the entire enormous canvas. So notice our artboard, even though it's very big, as these numbers are suggesting right here, it is not taking up the entire canvas. I just happened to make it so it looks good on screen. But notice I can see the entire canvas at 0.39%, as you can see down here in the bottom left corner. So I just want to make that clear. If I were to zoom in to 100% by pressing Control 1 or Command 1 on the Mac, well, this is part of some character of type. Might be an O. Not quite sure, but you know what? I really want to go back where I was, so I'll once again zoom out to that 1% zoom ratio. Now, by way of demonstration, I want you to see here, because it's one thing to sit there and talk about 72 buses, you know, city buses and that kind of stuff. How about something more exciting, like a Brachiosaurus? That's a full, real-size Brachiosaurus. It looks dinky because we're zoomed way out. But notice if I click on it to select it with my black arrow tool, and then you can see the width and height values up here in the horizontal control panel. Or if I went to the window menu and chose properties, because I venture that many of you have your properties panel open, notice the width and height values there. They're set in points. No, but it is huge size. It's ludicrous to work with 1/72 of an inch. So I'll bring up my ruler, by the way, by pressing Control R is what I meant to do. I accidentally hit Shift R, but that's of no mind. We get these dinky, itty bitty, tiny, irritating, horrible rulers here on the PC. On the Mac, they look normal. Don't know why. Fix it, Adobe. Fix it. Anyway, right click on the teeny ruler if you can find it, and then switch to feet. And you'll see 45 feet wide is this Brachiosaurus, 42 feet high, just like in Jurassic Park. Anyway, I'm going to hide the properties panel because I can see these values up here in a much smaller control panel. With 45 feet, that's a 45-foot object. We just happen to be zoomed out from it, and it's 42 feet high. And you can switch to some other unit of measure if you want to. I'm going to hide those dinky, horrible rulers by pressing Control R or Command R on the Mac. Now, I want to stress something. This document could be huge. Like, it might be dangerously large, right? You gotta save it on disk. It's going to just take up a massive amount of space. After all, if this were a Photoshop document this big, it'd be like a gigabyte or more. But this is Illustrator, right? Everything's vectors. And so the file size, the size of this file, the file size of this weighs in under 200K. It's like 195K or something like that. It's dinky. Whereas, just so that we're, oranges versus oranges or whatever, the Brachiosaurus weighs around 75,000 pounds or 34,000 kilos. That is 34 metric tons. So it's pretty colossal. Anyway, let's say you want to create something this enormous. Go to the File menu and choose the New command, as we did before. And what I want you to do is let's just change the unit of measure from points to feet. If you're not comfortable with feet, go with, meters. You can do meters, by the way, if you want. I'm going to do feet. And I'm just going to say, let's make each one of these artboards 45 feet wide, let's say, and 60 feet tall. And we still have 12 of them, but they're enormous artboards, right? We'll give them huge bleeds as well. Let's just give them a foot bleed. Nobody in their right mind needs that much bleed, but still, I want you to see here that we've got this little warning icon. So this is when you know you're going to create a massive canvas. When you see this warning, hover over it. It says new artboards will be created on a large size canvas. That's where I got that large size thing. As the artboard dimensions are too big for the artboard, or the artboard count is too high, some limitations will apply. Now, I love that. You want to know what the limitations are? Well, here they are right here. Now, I can't guarantee that it'll still be the same URL, so I'm not going to read it to you. You can zoom in, pinch on it, unpinch, whatever it's called. Look at this. We got so many FAQs going here. How much canvas area do I get on moving to a large canvas? Well, I've already explained that. You don't need to look up that one. But, you know, can I copy my artwork from large canvas to default canvas? The answer is yes, you can. But sometimes it scales. Did you hear that scales? Just want to emphasize that. Can I export my PDF containing large-scaled artwork through ACID export? I don't know. Just click there and you'll find out. Anyway, what I'm going to do instead is click on more settings right there so that I can dial in a big, huge spacing value. Let's take it up to 20 feet. Nah, 20 feet, that's crazy. Is that crazy? Am I a crazy person for doing that? Let's take it down to 2 feet. But we still got 4 columns. That's great because we got 12 artboards. So this is going to work. Create document. Got another little warning there in case you forget, stuff. All right. I think actually Learn More takes you to the link. Yeah, it does. Anyway, create document. And cannot fit artboards in canvas size. Click OK. I can't. What happened? What did I do wrong? Is it my spacing is too big? You know what? Just cancel out of that dialog box for a moment and let's see. Let's see if I can't. I thought I tried this. Click create. Oh, well, this dialog box is okay with things. Just the other one. Or it was my spacing value. This is the pasteboard up here. These artboards are just crammed into this gigantic canvas after all. And so if you want to really take in the entire canvas, well, on this screen, it's 0.4%. Works out nicely. You've got more pixels probably to work with. But anyway, that is how you take advantage of, what is it called these days? The large size canvas. I've got the wrong tool selected here inside Modern Illustrator. All right, now for a meta trick. Yay, I love this new feature. And the idea here is I'm going to show you how to scale type beyond the well-known limit, maximum type size of 1,296 points, which happens to correspond to 18 inches. Now, why? Let's start with why. And the answer is I don't have the remotest idea. I searched as much as my little mind let me. If you find out what in the world is with this limit, please let me know. But I did figure this out. I don't know if this has anything to do with it. 16 times 81, that's 81, is 1,296. Who cares? Well, it's 2 to the 4th power times 3 to the 4th power. Or 6 to the 4th power. Does that have anything to do with this value? I don't know, but it sure is irritating that the fact that any kind of limit like this exists is just a pain in the neck. So let's start off with just your standard everyday canvas size, by the way. So 16,383 wide, 16,383 tall, I believe are the measurements. It looks small. This text looks small because we're zoomed out to 25%, as you can see in the bottom left corner. But this artboard is almost, if I zoom out here, it's taking up a lot of the default canvas size in darker gray, by the way. Anyway, I'm going to dial in, once again, 25%. Now, let's say I want to select this type. I'm going to. It's set in sans serif variable, which is one of those fonts that's built into Illustrator. Notice that the type size is 400 points. Okay, so let's say I just decide I want it to be bigger, so I'm going to change that value to 4,000 points. And Illustrator basically effectively says, now, little man, don't get terribly ahead of yourself there. Why don't we agree on 1,296 points? Because that's as good as I'm going to do for you, which is terrible. What in the world is with that? What a rotten thing Illustrator's doing to me. So one thing is you can convert the text to outlines, but then it's not editable anymore, so that's a terrible solution. Here's a couple. One I've never seen documented before. I'll go to the window menu, drop down to type, and then choose character, or you have that keyboard shortcut, Control-T, Command-T on the Mac. Brings up the character panel. You never use these, right? Vertical scale and horizontal scale. Well, now you want to notice if I change, this happens to fit. I'm going to change the vertical scale value to 220%, and I'll change the horizontal scale value to 220%. You want them to match, and that way we get whopping big text. So you take 1,296 times 2.2, whatever that is. All right, I caved. I went ahead and got out my calculator. Something along the lines of 2,850 points is what it reconciles to be. All right, so that's an option, by the way, and you could really take these values high. How high, you ask? Well, let's try 10,000%. That worked. 10,000%. So we have a type size that's limited to 1,296 points, but we've got these outrageous values It would possibly unlimited for vertical and horizontal scale. All right, that's nonsense. Anyway, I'm going to undo that stuff because what I want to show you is the more traditional sort of technique that folks use. Bandy about anyway. Go to the effect menu, choose distort and transform, and choose transform to apply a dynamic scale. And so I'm going to take both of these values right here, the horizontal and vertical scale values, up to 220%. Now, that doesn't scale with respect to the baseline. Did you notice the other scale values did? They scaled with respect to the baseline. This doesn't. And so you'd want to select this bottom little kind of point right here in this little matrix. That moves the text too far up, and then you'd want to take it down by clicking in the vertical move value and pressing shift up arrow a bunch of times until you get that baseline down. So the baselines match each other. The letters, that is, rest on that baseline. Uh-oh. Do you notice the problem there? These values got to match unless you want to stretch the type. So horizontal and vertical are both 220%. See, what led me to notice that this was a problem is this vertical value needs to be higher, which moves the text down. So vertical up, you increase the vertical value to move stuff down in this dialog box, and then I can click OK. All right, so you can work that way if you want to on your tiny little old pre-2020 canvas, or you can create a ginormous canvas. So now I just want you to see, I'll go ahead and zoom out. I want you to see that this is a huge canvas. What is it? 163,830 points wide and tall, something like that. Very, very big. You can go back in the movie if you want to. I'm going to take this scale value right there, the zoom level, down to 1%. Is that what I set it to? Yeah. And so this is a ginormous canvas with a big artboard inside of it. The artboard measures like 155 feet wide by 99 feet tall. And so now notice that I could enter a big font size value, like 4,000 points, and it works. It looks dinky because this is such an enormous artboard. Our big, huge, now we're limited still. We are still limited to a type size this time in our large size canvas of 12,960 points, but at least it's higher. Now, it's not good enough because I want this text to fill the screen, right? So just take advantage of your poison, pick your poison is what I'm saying. And so I'm going to change these vertical and horizontal scale values. I'm going to change the first one to 220%, and I'm going to change the second one to 220%. That doesn't work at all. And so what I'm going to do, I thought it might, but it doesn't. I think you're watching this go a little bit sideways, but hey, I'll figure it out on the fly. Let's try 600 points. That looks good. 600%. I'm sorry, 600%. And well, I could finesse it, of course. I'll go ahead and hide the character panel. So 600% for both of those scale values. I did scale with respect to the baseline there, but the baseline's too high. So I'll just go ahead and drag it down like so, and we end up with this absolutely enormous text. That is the equivalent, I bet you want to know, of setting the type size all by itself to 77,760 points, which I gotta say is more like it. And that is yet another way to take advantage of that 100x100 times canvas, if you will, here inside the most recent versions, plural, of Illustrator. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Do you like the idea of creating enormous artwork? Do you have artwork lying around that you'd like to supersize? Well, it's a little trickier than it sounds, which is why I devote an entire exclusive video to the topic at patreon.com/Deke now. Then go to Deke.com and subscribe to my newsletter. I'm Deke McClelland. This is Illustrator Now.